Toxic metals like mercury, cadmium, aluminum, lead, arsenic, things that are potentially wreaking havoc on your health. How do we get them out of your body? How did they get there to begin with? And what are we going to do about it at this point? That's what we're going to talk about in this presentation, how to safely and effectively remove these toxic metals from your body. Let's get into it. My name is Jeff Hoyt, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, wellness enthusiast, entrepreneur. I love innovation. I believe in doing things differently with the idea of getting results that haven't been achieved before. I've developed a number of innovative brands in the wellness space, Glyco Life Sciences, Super Strength Nutraceuticals, Recharge Clinic, Biohacking Center, all sorts of fun technology, cryotherapy, oxygen, hydrogen, all the good stuff. And then I really started getting to detox about 4 or 5 years ago. I've got the Detox Coach brand, the Zeolite Coach, Zeolite Labs. And what I discovered from all the fancy technology I was utilizing and world-class supplements was that the missing link to a lot of people's health recovery was the detox aspect, because detox is harder than we think. And a lot of the traditional detox approaches, whether it be technology like the infrared saunas or various supplements, although can be helpful, are often limited. And that's what I discovered and really put my attention onto detox and really next generation detox techniques. So we're talking about detox in this presentation and a new way to detox. So it's going to be stuff that you probably haven't heard before. Over the past 4 years, since I really started diving into the detox aspect, I've helped over 6,000 people detox heavy metals from their bodies with this new approach, right? It's a better way to detox. And have you been classified as too sick to detox? This approach even works for you. A proper detox protocol can be absolutely life-changing, revolutionary. Just look what Roxanne had to say. I hadn't worked for 2 years from being ill and having no energy. There was a point where my legs hurt so bad that I couldn't get out of bed. My vitamins and minerals were super low, and I was taking supplements that weren't absorbing. I also wasn't able to lose weight. After starting ZeoCharge, the weight started coming off. I lost 20 pounds in the last 6 months. I have more energy now and have been able to return to work for the first time in 2 years. Awesome stuff. So what are we going to be talking about in this presentation? One, who needs to detox? Why detoxing is harder than you think, or maybe that you've been taught in the past. We're going to look at the 3 levels of detox, which is the theory that I developed on how the body processes heavy metals. We're going to talk about detox reactions and how they might not be what you've been taught and what you think they may be. A lot of people think they're a very positive reaction. I have a little different perspective, which we're going to get into. We're going to talk about the daily dose toxins. And then we're going to get into it, the solutions, right? How do we get these toxic heavy metals out of our bodies? And then we're going to talk about my favorite method, the most effective and efficient method that I found to do so, the ultimate zeolite experience. So who needs to detox? All right, if we're living in the 21st century, we all have to detox, right? We're not going to be healthy by accident anymore. The food, water, air is all polluted to some extent. We need to actively be detoxing to take control of our health. So there's 3 kind of things I like to consider when it comes to heavy metal toxicity. One is the toxic burden itself. How many heavy metals do you have in your body? People with a higher level of heavy metals are going to require more of a detox. Additionally, people that are more sensitive to metals are going to be more in need of a detox. So 2 people could have the same amount of heavy metals, but one person might be more sensitive to those heavy metals, whether they have an autoimmune condition or some sort of overactive immune response to the metals. So it's more important for those individuals to detox. And then there's a synergy. When you combine different heavy metals and toxic elements together, they become synergistically more dangerous in the body. So if you've got a number of different toxic elements, it becomes increasingly important to detox. So an interesting thing is if you have a complex health challenge, an autoimmune condition or something else, that automatically equals an accumulation of heavy metals and other toxic elements, because the body doesn't have enough what I call detox energy or natural resources available to focus on detox. So it takes those heavy metals and things that we're exposed to on a daily basis, and it just tucks them into fat and tissue for later use because it doesn't have energy to deal with it. So if you're someone that has been struggling, losing weight, brain fog, weak immune system, you're doing everything right, but you're not getting the right results, a detox protocol is probably a great next step for you, because heavy metal toxicity and other toxic elements can just be barriers to healing, especially if you're the type of person who is doing everything you can. You're doing everything right, but you're not getting the results that you're desiring. So, and microbial issues, right? So a lot of people are experiencing yeast, candida overgrowth, parasites, bacterial overgrowth, viral infections, these things. And these infections are opportunistic, meaning they need an opportunity to thrive. So a lot of times we'll go in and we'll start killing these things with various natural antimicrobial agents, etc. But then they usually tend to come back later. So if you've done a protocol and you felt better for a while, but then you ended up back where you started, there could be heavy metals or toxic elements that are providing the opportunity for the microbes to thrive. And if that's the case, you have to remove the underlying cause, those toxic elements, clean up the environment, and then the microbes won't have that opportunity and they'll start leaving on their own. And then another interesting thing is bone loss. As you age and you start losing bone does store toxic metals like lead and cadmium. So as you start losing bone, the natural storage unit for those metals starts decreasing in size, and those metals like the cadmium and the lead start exiting the bone and entering the bloodstream, where they can be very toxic and potentially redistribute to other organs and cause problems. What are some of the symptoms of heavy metal toxicity? Why do we want to get these heavy metals out of our bodies? Well, number one, fatigue. So a lot of people that have heavy metal toxicity are going to be experiencing, chronic fatigue, just not having the energy that they should have. They're not reaching their full energy potential. Brain fog is a huge one. A lot of people with metal toxicity experience not being able to think clearly, having constant brain fog, and it's very irritating, especially in 21st century living, which is busy and we've just got a lot to do. Immune system challenges. When you have the metal toxicity, these metals are constantly in the body, triggering an immune response, making the body work harder than normal to stay balanced. And then that takes energy away from the immune system that it could be focusing on, various microbial invaders or other things. So when you're exposed to some pathogen, the immune system might not have enough resources or energy available to effectively deal with it because it's preoccupied with these heavy metals. Digestion is a big one, whether it's irritable bowel syndrome, irritable bowel disease, anything with inflammation in the gut. These metals can be very irritating to the intestinal lining, to the digestive tract, and can cause all sorts of digestive issues, including constipation or diarrhea on the other end. Bone loss. So we talked about how when you lose bone, it can release the heavy metals into your body, kind of poisoning you, but also they can result in bone loss itself because the essential minerals will compete for space with heavy metals. So when you have, let's say, lead that has stored itself in the bone, that's pushing out calcium. So now the calcium is not able to absorb, and that could result in bone loss. Same with cadmium and zinc. So when you have the heavy metals in, it's hard. The minerals that you're taking a lot of times are not absorbing because the metals are basically a placeholder in the bone. So it can contribute to bone loss as well. And then stubborn fat, that's a big one. A lot of people who have had just that, maybe you've had a successful weight loss journey, but there's that last few pounds, 5, 10, 15, whatever it is, that you just can't lose. It's possible because that it's your body's not letting you lose the weight, because fat can actually be protective against heavy metal toxicity, because the body likes to store toxic elements into fat, and the body would prefer to store heavy metals like the mercury, cadmium, and lead in general, stomach fat, belly fat, or just general fat throughout the body, opposed to in organs where it's going to be even more toxic. So if you have a higher level of heavy metals, your body might not let you lose the extra fat because it's actually protecting you. Because if you lose the fat, the metals are then released into the bloodstream, and it can be a very harsh experience, and they potentially could redistribute to organs. So that's another interesting thing. A lot of people, they go on this detox protocol and they just start losing weight, and they're not even changing their diet or exercising more. It's just that as the toxic burden is released, the body doesn't need as much fat as a storage unit, as a self-defense mechanism. So where are we getting these heavy metals? Where are they coming from? How are they accumulating in our bodies? We like to say, they're in the food, water, and air to start with, right? We're all going to be exposed to some extent in those areas, just in the environment in general. We've got a lot of great manufacturing processes and industry that make our lives a lot easier, but they come at a cost, and we're just living in a more toxic environment than potentially in years past. Cookware is another thing. Anytime you have a toxic metal like aluminum, and you're heating it up to high temperatures, it's more likely to be released potentially into the food and then into your body, something to be aware of. And then amalgam fillings is actually a huge one, right? So those metal fillings that a lot of people have in their mouths are comprised of usually about 45 to 50% mercury by content. And then they've got a lot of silver and some other metals as well. And it's very interesting. So, and I'm going to show a few examples here that show that the amalgam fillings absolutely leach mercury and silver and other metals into your body where they accumulate in tissue over time, right? It's kind of been a debated topic over the years where they say, oh, they're safe, they're not leaching, but we can basically prove. I've seen every single person I've tested that has or has had the metal amalgam fillings has increased levels of mercury and silver in their tissue. And I'm going to show you some examples right now. So here's one, and this is a tissue test I'm going to explain a little bit later, but we're looking at the tissue levels here, which is really cool, of this person's heavy metals. And this individual is someone who has the amalgam fillings in their mouth. And as you can see, you have the mercury super high, silver super high. And look how they're lined up. Because I mean, they're a very similar ratio. There's a little bit more mercury usually in the fillings than silver, but look at that. Mercury, silver super high, and aluminum super high as well. So very interesting. Here's another one. Same thing, person with fillings in their mouth, high mercury, silver, and aluminum. Very similar, actually. Here's another one. Aluminum's a little lower, but look at the mercury and silver. So these are people who have the amalgam fillings in their mouth. When you test these individuals, they almost always, when you're looking at the tissue level, almost always have, actually every single time I've tested, they have had high levels of mercury and silver. So it just shows you that these metals are leaving the teeth. They're accumulating in tissue throughout the body. And the metals, the amalgams in the mouth are very close to the brain. So it's very possible that the mercury is going into the brain as well, which could be, that's a whole nother topic. Could be, obviously we don't want mercury or any other heavy metals in our brain. So then the question is, well, what if you had your fillings removed, right? A lot of people say, oh no, I had a bunch of fillings in my mouth 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but they're removed. So does that mean I don't have an issue anymore? Well, not necessarily, because now I'm going to show you an example, 3 examples of people who had fillings removed 20 years ago. And we're going to see if the mercury naturally left their body or if it stayed there. Here we go. So here's example number 1 of someone who had their amalgam fillings removed over 20 years ago. Look at this. It's just as bad as the people who still had them in. And it's because it's not just about reducing or removing the exposure to the metal. You have to actually go in and remove the mercury that has been stored in the body. It just doesn't go anywhere. This is 20 years later. The body hasn't been able to naturally remove it. It's still high, mercury and silver, absolutely incredible. Here's another one. 20 years, over 20 years after the fillings have been removed. Some of the silver's coming down a little bit, but the mercury is still super high. And this person has a lot of other metals as well. And that's the thing. Just when you're exposed to one heavy metal, like mercury, and mercury I think is the most toxic out of all the heavy metals, generally speaking. When you have high levels of mercury, it's so stressful on the body that the body's natural detox functions are impaired, and then they start accumulating all these other metals. So a lot of times it's just one metal like mercury that causes the metal toxicity of the other things. Because then as you're exposed over 20, 30 years to the metals just in food and from the environment, if your body's not naturally processing them and getting them out as they come in, they're just slowly building up. And that's kind of what we see here. Here's another one. Over 20 years ago, the fillings were removed from the mouth. Bam, super high mercury and antimony in this individual, a little bit different. So it kind of depends what you're exposed to. But all these people had super high mercury. The people that still have amalgams in their mouth, and even the people who have them removed. And it surprises people because they say, I got him out, but the body is very resistant to detox. And we're going to talk about it, why detox is just harder than people think. And these metals just get stuck. They get stored in tissue. The body tucks them away in fat and it leaves them there. And we want to get them out. So how do we become toxic, right? So one is the exposure. And then the other one is the health challenge. So obviously, if we're exposed to a lot of heavy metals, that could be an issue. And it is based on detox pathways and natural detox potential as well. So if you're not able to handle what's coming in, if your natural processes of detox aren't able to handle what are coming in, that's when you're going to start getting exposure. Or if you were that's just on a daily basis, just daily accumulation. If you're exposed to a high level of metals, once or twice or 3 times, or just a few times in your life, that could also be a result. Because even if you were just exposed a number of years ago, those metals might still be stuck because your body just keeps them in fat. The other thing is if you have a health challenge. So if you have a health challenge, your body's detox functions are not going to be optimized as well as someone that's healthy because they just don't have the energy because their bodies are focusing on the health challenge and they're just overactive, just working overtime, all the systems of the body, so they don't have enough resources to allocate towards detox, and the body kind of deprioritizes detox because it says, you know what, these metals are coming in, I don't really have enough energy to deal with them, I'm just going to tuck them into fat and have to deal with this other stuff, the microbes and the mental emotional stress and all these other things. So it's kind of interesting. So sometimes heavy metals, a lot of times heavy metals are the cause or a main contributing factor to a number of health conditions, right? And they can cause so many different symptoms, neurological symptoms, immune systems, all sorts of stuff. Heavy metals can be linked to all these things. But what's interesting is a lot of times heavy metal toxicity can be the result of the health challenge, right? So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. So let's say someone gets very sick from heavy metal toxicity, and then they develop a complex health challenge. And then it's kind of a negative spiral down because of the health challenge and the heavy metal toxicity, their detox pathways are impaired and they continue accumulating over time. And the issue just gets worse and worse and worse. On the other end, let's say someone develops a chronic health condition from something unrelated to heavy metals. And then, or it could even just be an extended period of stress in the life where the body's just using a lot of its energy just to deal with the, mental, emotional, whatever kind of stress it is. And then a health, autoimmune condition or some health issue is developed, then the body starts accumulating the heavy metals because of that, because the body doesn't have energy to focus on it. And at that point, the heavy metals then become a contributing factor and make the underlying condition worse, right? So sometimes the heavy metals are the initial cause or the primary cause of the condition. Other times they come later and then become a contributing factor and make the condition worse. And that's why people just continue getting worse and worse and worse with these chronic health conditions. So either way, the heavy metals are going to be an issue and we want to get them out, whether they were the primary cause or a resulting of the primary cause and a contributing factor. So we have a couple steps here when it comes to heavy metal detox. Step one, we want to reduce the exposure of the metals. We want to remove the major sources that are potentially causing accumulation in our body on a daily basis. That's step number one. But then the overlooked step is going to be actually removing the deeply stored metals from our bodies, right? So going back to the amalgam example, if you get the amalgam fillings removed, that's only step one. That's reducing the exposure. But as we saw, those metals just stay in the body. So we have to take an additional step to remove those deeply stored metals that potentially have been there for years. And that's what we're going to really get into here in this presentation as we keep going. So why is detox harder than you think? It's just many people think that they are detoxing from various cleanses, various supplements, what they've read online, various detox gurus, etc. But unfortunately, a lot of times they just aren't because it's just harder than people think. The number one key to understand here is that the body is in control of detox. It's not a supplement. It's not a technology. If the body doesn't want to detox, it's not going to detox. So you can be taking, detox supplements that have various claims that they're going to be removing all these heavy metals from your body. You could be taking those for years and not really detoxing. Because if the body doesn't want to detox, it won't detox. So that brings us to the question, okay, why wouldn't the body want to detox? Doesn't it want these toxic metals out of our bodies? Well, you have to consider the body's primary focus is actually on short-term survival over long-term thrival, right? The body wants to maintain balance in the blood primarily. So it's willing to sacrifice organ function and short-term balance for short-term balance. So for example, let's say you're exposed to a toxic element and it ends up in an organ. The body, while it's not good to be in the organ, let's say it's in your kidney, it's deteriorating the kidney and causing extra stress on the kidney. The body would prefer to have it there than to have it in the blood where it's actively being attacked by the immune system. So basically, when the body sequesters these heavy metals into organs and fat, it's protective in a way because it's hiding them from the immune system, so it doesn't cause as much immediate inflammation and issues, but it's deteriorating the organ, whether that be in the brain or the kidneys or the liver or whatever it is. But like, let's say metals in the brain, the body's more focused on the short-term survival. So from the body's perspective, it says, you know what, I can live with a shrunken brain, with Alzheimer's, but if these metals are constantly floating around, I can't handle it because it's too stressful. So very interesting. So we really have to understand this to understand how to effectively remove these from the body, because the body sometimes is resistant to detox because it doesn't want to stir the pot. It doesn't want to stir these things up, overload the bloodstream circulation, and have this chronic immune response where you get all this inflammation and all these issues. So when you're taking detox supplements, a lot of times the body says, no, thank you. I'm keeping the metals exactly where they are, no matter what you do, and they're tucked away there. So that's where it becomes very challenging, and a lot of detox products and protocols are just not going to work for a lot of people. The key to an effective detox, especially getting out the deeply stored metals, is going to be to work with the body and not fight against it, right? And that's why most of the detox strategies fail, because they fight against the body. And when I'm talking about detox here, and we're going to get into 3 levels, I'm really talking about the deeply stored stuff. So a lot of the detox protocols are going to be able to help detox to some extent. I'm not saying they're not helping at all. A lot of times they're going to be able to help with your daily exposure and, you know, some stuff floating around. But what I'm talking about is the deeply stored things, like that mercury that's in the tissue. That's what most protocols fail to get to. So the goal with detox, really an effective detox, is to work with the body and not to fight against it. And that's what we're kind of going to talk about, because that's traditionally been the approach by most doctors. I mean, naturopathic doctors, functional medicine even, is that it's going to be this very stressful experience. We kind of have to suck it up, fight through it. And I don't really believe that's necessary. So one of the really important keys is that the most effective way to remove the deeply stored metals like that mercury is to encourage the body to naturally release it on its own. So opposed to trying to go in and just snag it with various protocols and chelation, the more effective way is for the body to release it. Because if the body doesn't want to let go, no matter what you put in there to try to grab it, the body's not going to let go. And the cells of the body are always stronger than any chelator, which I discovered through some testing, which is very interesting. All right, so now we're going to get into the 3 levels of detox. This is some fascinating stuff. This is just really how I think the body processes heavy metals. And I'm going to show you some visual examples as well, so this will make sense. But level 1, so these are basically 3 areas where the body stores heavy metals, right? So level 1 is going to be the transport and processing. So let's say you're exposed to mercury. You just ate a bunch of tuna, like way too much tuna, that like more tuna than you should have eaten, right? So all this, your body is immediately has all this, mercury from the tuna in the system, and the body starts processing it, right? It's in level 1. The body tries to remove all of it because it doesn't want it there. But depending on your level of resources available towards detox, your detox energy, you may be able to get it all out or maybe not. So in a super healthy person with a lot of detox energy and no health challenges, they might be able just to get rid of it all. In someone that's challenged a little bit more with health issues, they're going to have a more difficult time. And some of that mercury, the body is not able to get out of the body right away. So it has to do something with it. And that's where it tucks it into what I consider level 2, which is general tissue. So the mercury comes into the body through the tuna. It's being processed, in the gut and in the immune system and the bloodstream. It's being, to some level potentially attacked by the immune system. And the body doesn't want to keep it there, because remember, its focus is to remain balanced in the blood. So it wants to get it out of the blood, get it out of the gut. And if it can't, whatever it can't get out, it now tucks into level 2, which is general tissue, just kind of belly fat, just general tissue all throughout the body. And I consider that a short-term holding area, kind of a storage unit. And I think ideally the body holds metals here for a while until there's extra room in level 1 where the body can dump it back into level 1 to excrete it from the body. I think that's ideal, but a lot of times it just stays in level 2 because the body gets comfortable with it there. And level 1 is so preoccupied with the daily toxicity of life that there's just not enough room, right? So I think there's a certain amount of room in level 1, kind of a stress threshold. Once that's passed, then the body tucks everything else into general tissue. And then if general tissue, level 2, gets filled up, it has to go somewhere else. And that's where it goes into level 3, which is what I consider deep storage in organs. And that's where it's very difficult to remove, because once it gets there, the body really just keeps it there. And it's very difficult to remove because level 2 is already full and level 1's probably overburdened considering you have the metals in the other areas, and they just stay there for a long time, and then over time they're deteriorating the organs, and it's not a good situation. So let me show you an example here of what's going on. And there's a phenomena we're going to go over called detox cycling, where the body kind of goes through different phases of detox, not traditional phase 1, 2, 3, or what we read in textbooks, but kind of a different type of detox, which we're going to get into. So we're going to look at an example here of an individual who tested 4 times over a month. So we're looking every 7 days we tested this individual, and we can see how the body is actually processing metals. It's really cool. So the gray line is the initial test, the baseline, and then the colored line is 7 days later. So you can see almost all the metals are higher 1 week later, just a little bit. They're creeping up a little bit. So the baseline test is general tissue. So we're looking at level 2 to begin with. So as the metals rise, that means they're coming out of level 3 organs and they're coming in to level 2 general tissue, which is good. That's what you want in effective detox, because you want the body to push them out of organs, and then it goes into level 2. And then as we're going to see, the body then takes them from level 2 into level 1 out the body. Okay, so the metals are coming up, except for 2 of them, aluminum's down and gadolinium's down. And it's interesting, and this just goes back to the body's in control of detox. The body just innately will sometimes group certain metals together. So it'll be detoxing a certain group of metals, and then it'll rotate. And we're going to see it. It's really interesting. It just shows you it's less about, the specific chelator or detox agent and what it's attracted to, and more about what is the body willing to let go of. All right, so you see the metals are higher, even mercury. And you can see once again, this individual has amalgam fillings in the mouth, as we know from the paperwork, and also because you can see the elevated silver and mercury. So the metal is rising. So it's actually, there's more metal in organs, and not just in general tissue. So it's actually worse than we even thought from the initial test. All right. So then 1 week later, the metals are even higher. So we saw from the first week, the metals came up a little bit. And then on week 2, the metals came up even more. So the body is dumping these metals from organs into, so that's level 3, into general tissue, level 2. Absolutely incredible. And interestingly, the aluminum went down even more, and the gadolinium went down even more. So those 2 are going down, everything else is going up. And what that signifies is the gadolinium and the aluminum are going from level 2, which is the baseline, to level 1, which is being excreted from the body. And all the other metals are going from level 2 or level 3 to level 2. So basically, very interesting. So basically, the only metals that are leaving the body right now are aluminum and gadolinium. The other metals are in a prep phase where they're going from organs to general tissue. And it's probably just because the body didn't have enough energy to deal with everything at once. So it selected a couple and kind of pushed those out, and everything else is going from this different phase. All right. So now week 3, actually, this is showing this person's vitamin levels after 2 weeks, which is absolutely fascinating, because traditionally when you look at detox, people think it's going to mess up your vitamins, it's going to mess up your minerals, it's going to be stressful. We can see that this person's getting a deep level detox, and at the same time, it's optimizing their vitamin levels. Every single vitamin is skyrocketing here. This is from no supplements except for the one Zeolite product that we're going to be talking about at the proper dose. And even the vitamin D level went up. This individual was in Iowa in the winter, not exposed to sun. The vitamin D still went up. And I've seen this a lot. And it's because as there's a huge connection between mercury levels and vitamin D. As you have high mercury levels, the body, a lot of times, its ability to synthesize and have optimal vitamin D levels is impaired. So this person the health is improving. The vitamins are skyrocketing at the same time as they're detoxing. Absolutely phenomenal. That's what we want in a detox. All right, week 3. So we had week 1, the levels coming up. Week 2, levels coming up more. Now week 3, they came down. So this is where the body says, all right, we've dumped enough metals from organs into general tissue. Now we're going to get them out of the body. So as they come down, that's when they're actually going from level 2 to level 1, and they're leaving the body. And then you can see it's inverted. Now the aluminum and the gadolinium are going up. So it's completely the opposite. So the first 2 weeks, the aluminum, gadolinium went down, indicating they're leaving the body from general tissue level 2. And while the other metals were going up, indicating that they're coming from organs into general tissue. And now on week 3, it's reversed, where the metals that previously came from the organs into general tissue are now going down. So that's when they're leaving the body. So it's not what a lot of people think, where you just take something and it's constantly just going in and grabbing things and removing it from the body right away. It goes in this process, and it's all up to the body. That's why it's so beautiful, because the body knows what to do and what it's capable of handling. And we saw from the vitamin levels that this was not a stressful experience at all in the body, which is absolutely incredible. So very interesting stuff. And then we go to week 4, and once again, the body starts back on the other phase of slowly pushing the metals out again, right? So the metals came up, indicating from organs to general tissue, first 2 weeks. Then they left the body. And now that there's more room in general tissue again, because you got rid of the other ones, the body now starts pushing out the metals again. And now they're coming from organs. And the cycle repeats over and over and over. So it goes up, down, up, down, up, down. Absolutely fascinating. We're going to talk about this test a little bit because it's really cool. You can't see this on most traditional tests. But when we're looking at tissue, we're just seeing how the body is processing metals. Fascinating stuff. Look at another example of what I'm calling detox cycling, this phenomena where the body is, kind of cycling through these different phases of detox. Here's an individual right off the bat. We can see she's got the amalgam fillings, high mercury, silver. But after 30 days on the detox protocol, you can see the baseline was here in the gray. The levels are way higher. So once again, this is great because the body is pushing out metals from organs and they're coming into the general tissue. But then the next test, the next month, they're coming down. So initially they come up, they're going from organs, level 3, to general tissue, level 2. And then as they come down, they're going from that general tissue into level 1 where they're being excreted from the body. So, and then this cycle repeats over and over and over. It's really cool. And that brings us to talking about heavy metal testing, right? Just because most of the time, heavy metal tests are not interpreted properly and they're misunderstood and misused. And it's just tricky because we have to understand what we're looking at with each test. So there's a lot of good tests. We're going to look at 6 different options here, but just they're all snapshots. We have to understand the limitations. None of the tests are going to be able to determine the level of heavy metals that are deeply stored in organs without an actual biopsy. So we've got, your blood testing, which is just level 1, right? So if you were just exposed to a metal, you might get some results in the blood testing. But what if you were exposed and the body has already processed the metals and tucked them into organs and in tissue? They're not going to show up in the blood, or they're going to be very limited. So it's just limited in that way. For acute exposure, it might be okay. You've got urine, also level 1. It's an excretion test. It's measuring what the body is processing through urine, right? So if you have these metals, tucked away in your brain and in organs, and your body's not actively removing them because it's just keeping them there, once again, not going to show up on urine. Same with hair. It's an excretion test, level 1, kind of measuring metals over time. Now, these are all good tests. We just have to understand what we're looking at. And one thing to consider is people a lot of times will get, for example, a urine test, and they'll have some levels of a certain metal like, cadmium or silver and aluminum and things. And they just naturally assume, because those are the highest levels on the test, that those are the biggest problem. But what it's really indicating is that's what the body's excreting. So in these individuals, a lot of times it's the mercury that's much more toxic for them. It's just not showing up, or not showing up at a high level because the body's not excreting as much of it because it's so toxic and it's harder to get rid of. So they can really lead people astray. We just have to really be aware of these things. They're just we have to, what are they measuring? Circulation in the blood, excretion in the urine and the hair. Then you've got tests like the ELISA, which is measuring not levels of metals, but the immune reactivity to specific metals. So that one's kind of interesting. Then we have bioenergetic testing like electrodermal screening, muscle testing, things like that, which can be helpful when used properly, but also just measuring level 1. So they're not really going to generally detect the deeply stored stuff because the energy testing is detecting what the body is currently processing. And then we've got the Oligo scan, and this is what I've just shown you a few examples of. This is the test that I'm utilizing, and this is the only test that's actually as the baseline measuring level 2, right? So it's measuring the level of heavy metals in the tissue of your hand, which is really cool. So it's just different. So all the other ones are measuring, what the body is processing, what they're excreting. This is more of a storage test, what the body is currently storing in general tissue. It's using spectrophotometry to measure the level of heavy metals in your hand. Now, with all of these tests, with the blood, the urine, the hair, the illegal scan, you actually want the levels to go up. A lot of people think they just want to get a test. They want to test a few months later, see if the metals are gone. That's not an appropriate way to use heavy metal testing, because we want to see how the body's processing metals, and you actually want to see levels go up. Because if the level goes up, that means the body is now, like on the first three, if the level goes up, that means the body is now excreting more of the heavy metals. So it's pulling the heavy metals from somewhere, and they're now leaving the body, which is good. What we don't know is where they're coming from. So with the blood, urine, and hair, if the level rises, which means they're coming out of tissue, that's great. What we don't know is, are they just coming out of general tissue, or are they level 2, or are they coming out of the deeply stored areas like the organs level 3? And that's what we just can't tell with those tests. That's why I like the illegal scan, because you're already measuring level 2 as a baseline. So if the level rises on that test, it means the metals are coming out of level 3 organs and they're coming into level 2. So that's why it's a little bit different. But all these tests are going to be limited. We just have to understand that none of these are testing organ levels. They're not biopsies. And I don't recommend any of these tests just to be taken once every few months. I think they have to be used monthly to identify trends and how the body is processing metals. That's how I utilize it. When I utilize the illegal scan, I test at least every single 30 days to see how the body processes metals, because it goes through cycles. And if you just test randomly, you don't know if the body is on the phase where it's dumping metals from organs to tissue, or if it's going from tissue to out the body. The results are going to be different. So if you're just planning on getting a test and retesting after 6 months, I would honestly say just don't get tested at all, because the results are probably just going to be, it's probably going to lead you astray, and you're just not going to have a good picture of what's going on. So that's just something to be aware of with heavy metal testing. I think if you're going to get any of them, the blood, urine, hair, illegal skin, you have to test monthly to see what's going on. That's just my opinion on that. Now we're going to talk about an incredibly important topic, which is detox reactions, which I think are really misunderstood in the detox industry. Generally, it's accepted that when you experience a negative detox reaction, like a headache, joint pain, irritability, some sort of reaction to the detox, it's a sign that it's working. I have a different perspective on it. I mean, it does mean it's doing something, right? It's working to some perspective. But I think really what's happening is that stress is being added to the body, right? So when you're having a reaction, I think it's just some sort of toxicity overload, and it's a stressful experience. We know it's a stressful experience on the body anytime you have a reaction, because that's what the sign of the detox symptom is. Now, I think what could be happening is, one, you could just be stirring stuff up and just irritating things. Or you could be, let's say, if you're at max capacity in level 1, you've got, your threshold of what you can handle on a daily basis, and then you take a detox agent and it pushes metals from levels 2 or level 3 into level 1, and it overloads the system. That could kind of overburden it, and you start getting reactions. Now, from there, a couple things could happen. One could be redistribution, which is not ideal. It's because you have too much circulating toxicity at that point that the body can't process at all, which is, indicated by the reaction. And then some of it might find a new home. That's what we call redistribution of a heavy metal. Now, the other type of reaction is, a Herxheimer reaction. That's more of a microbial die-off, and that one's better, because you definitely don't want the redistribution. It can be okay, because let's say you get, 8 parts of mercury out of the body and 2 parts redistribute. You're still a net positive because you removed it, but it's just not ideal because you don't know where that mercury is going, and it's just a less efficient detox. Plus, you have to deal with the symptoms. The Herxheimer is when you're like a bacterial die-off, where you have like bacteria or some microbe that's attached to a metal, and as you stir things up, your immune system is exposed to these microbes. It attacks them, and then you get reactions from there. So sometimes those are unavoidable, but anytime you can limit or reduce or completely eliminate detox reactions from your detox protocol, that's going to be ideal, because it's a gentler, more effective detox, right? Because the best way to detox is really, in my opinion, is really a gentle detox. Because if it's really harsh and you're getting terrible symptoms the whole time, then one, you might not even be able to continue on it because it's so terrible. And two, it's just a sign that extra stress is being added to your body. And in an ideal detox situation, you actually reduce the stress load on your body while detoxing, opposed to add to it. Now, a lot of people say that's impossible, but in about 90% of my clients, I'm able to actually reduce the stress load on their body while detoxing, which is incredible. And in about 98% of clients, they're able to detox without negative symptoms, which is absolutely incredible. So pretty interesting stuff there. So daily dose toxins are going to be, what we're exposed to on a daily basis. So level one, it's what we're currently processing, and it's going to be from external exposure, just what we're exposed to, food, water, air, personal care products, cosmetics, etc. And then what the most overlooked aspect, I think, of toxicity is going to be our internally produced toxins. So our bodies are natural toxin factories, right? We're producing metabolic waste products, microbial waste, all these various things on a daily basis. And this is normal, right? Our bodies are producing it. If our bodies are working at full capacity, they can process them all, get them out, no problem. But if we're overburdened, if we're experiencing health challenges, that's when they become a problem, because it's taking up so much energy just to work on these internally produced toxins that we don't have energy to work on the other metals that are and other toxic elements coming in, let alone the things that are deeply stored in our bodies. And that's why these things just stay there forever, because our body never has enough energy to get rid of them. So the internally produced toxins are regenerative. So they're new every single day because they're just being produced constantly by the body. So if your body's constantly working on these things and it's taking up all of your energy, resources allocated towards detox, then the metals and other things coming in through the food, water, air, and daily exposure, the body's not going to have enough energy to work on. It's just going to tuck those straight into tissue or to organs. And then over time, you just accumulate, and you get more and more toxic. So that's the problem there. So like metabolic waste products, one of those would be ammonia. So ammonia is a byproduct of protein digestion that the body is just producing daily. And the body takes the ammonia, brings it to the liver, where it converts it to a less toxic, but still toxic byproduct called urea. Then it goes to the kidneys, and the kidneys excrete the urea from the body. So if your liver is not working properly, then a lot of times you get a buildup of ammonia. And ammonia can build up in the bloodstream where it becomes incredibly toxic. It can actually cross the blood-brain barrier and kill brain cells, not ideal. If your kidneys aren't functioning properly, you can get a buildup of urea, also toxic. So there's a lot of things. If your body's, if you're not as healthy as you're going to be, then that's when these things become a problem. Your body's focusing a lot of energy. Even these can be toxic. And then you've got the accumulation of other toxic elements from the daily exposure. So really the key to an effective detox, one, is to start addressing all of this stuff. Because let's say you've got all this going on, you can barely handle your daily dose of toxins. Then you try to do a detox protocol that goes straight in and starts removing mercury from an organ or tissue, and it brings it in and adds it to this total stress. That's when you're going to get those terrible detox reactions, because your body couldn't even handle what it was doing to begin with. So that's why addressing all of this initially is going to be step one to an effective detox protocol, because otherwise the body is going to be under an incredible amount of stress from removing those other metals from organs. And eventually the body's probably going to shut off its detox pathways if that becomes too stressful, and not even release metals from organs anymore. So that's why we want to start here with level one. So detox energy is just, the total resources that your body has available to put towards detox, right? So the healthier someone is, the more detox energy they have, meaning just the more toxic elements they're exposed to on a daily basis, they're able to handle more than the average person. So two people could be exposed to the exact same amount of toxic elements, but if one person has way less detox energy, they could be accumulating those metals, whereas the other person could be getting them out of the body. So the healthier you are, the more detox energy you have. So people with the complex health challenges and autoimmune conditions and various things, they generally have so much going on in their body that they can't allocate as much energy towards detox. So they have lower detox energy, and then they end up with higher level of heavy metals because they're just accumulating over time. So if your daily dose of toxins, just what you're exposed to, is greater than your total ability to remove them, your detox energy, that's when you get accumulation. So a lot of people are accumulating heavy metals every single day. And then, this adds up after 10, 20, 30 years. You've just got incredible amounts of heavy metals and other toxic elements in your body. And it's going to take a while to get them out. That's why detox isn't an overnight process, because if it took 30 years to accumulate, it's going to take a couple years probably to get them out. And we can do it rather quickly, but the body's going to detox at its own pace. So anyone that tells you, go on this 30-day detox protocol and it's going to remove all the metals from your body, it's not going to happen. They don't know what they're talking about. Unfortunately, it's a marketing scam. It is what it is, or they just don't know. I'm not saying it's a scam. It's challenging. If it takes it just makes sense, right? If it takes a long time to get them in the body, it's going to take a certain amount of time to get them out, because the body will only allow metals to leave at a certain pace, because otherwise, it's going to be too dangerous on the way out. So step one to an effective detox, right, is addressing these daily dose. We don't want to just skip it, try to go grab metals from the brain, grab them from organs, because we have to deal with this daily dose of toxins that are floating around to give the body, basically make room, make available space for the body, level 1, to receive metals from the organs and the general tissue. That's really the key here. So now let's talk, okay, what is the best way to remove them, right? So we've got these heavy metals, we want them out of the body. There's all these different approaches online, and some of them, maybe they work, most of them probably don't, but what's the best way to do it? And I think it has to be natural, especially considering that it's going to have to be done for a number of months. We don't want to be taking something that's not natural, that's, harmful on the body for an extended period of time. We want to also be able to take something that you can take on a regular daily basis, opposed to most things that are so stressful, you have to keep going off of them. And then your body can't really get in the groove of detox because you have to keep pulsing on and off these things because they're so stressful. So we want it to be safe. We want it to be gentle. We want it to be natural. And we want it to be working with the body, not fighting against it. Because if you fight against the body, you're just not going to win. So when I say that, it'd be like trying to go in and rip out mercury from your brain when your brain's not ready to let go of the mercury because it has too much stuff floating around in the rest of the body and it just doesn't feel comfortable letting go. So the key is to get the body to naturally push out these metals on its own through its natural detox functions. That's what I say when I say working with the body. And then, of course, we want a full body detox. Right? A lot of detoxes are going to help because they're working on level 1, reducing the daily dose, maybe getting to level 2 general tissue, but very few protocols are actually able to get to the deeply stored metals because the body is just very resistant to detox because it just likes to keep them there because it's focused on the short-term survival. And if it's stressful to get the metals out of the body prefers just keep them in there. So that's just all there is to it, right? So we want it to be full body, of course, to get these deeply stored things out because we know that they just stick around forever if we don't do something about it. So let's talk about zeolite, right? Zeolite is really a game changer when it comes to detox, but it's not just any zeolite, right? It has to be a certain zeolite used in a certain way to get the results that we're talking about in this presentation here. And that's what we're really going to get into for the rest of the time here. But first of all, what is zeolite, right? It's a naturally occurring mineral. It's got this negative ionic charge, and it's attracted to positively charged toxic elements that don't belong in your body, things like heavy metals. What makes it unique compared to other, other detox methods like other binders or other chelators is that it's selective. Those other things generally go in, they just grab to everything, and they're stripping your essential nutrients and minerals, and they can't be taken long term because they're very stressful. Zeolite is a selective binder because it works not just by grabbing, but by a swap mechanism. So it looks like a honeycomb cage structure, the zeolite mineral. And what it does is it has potassium, magnesium, and electrolytes in its naturally occurring cage. And when it comes across a heavier element, so things like a heavy metal or a mold toxin or a radioactive isotope or ammonia or something of that nature, it trades what it has for heavier elements. And it just so happens that the toxic elements are heavier than the non-toxic. So it works out great. So let's say the zeolite cage that has the magnesium comes across an essential nutrient. It just leaves it alone, like a vitamin or another mineral, because it already has the heavier element, which is the electrolyte. But if it comes across something toxic, like a mercury, cadmium, lead, or some toxic element, pesticide or herbicide or something, it trades it. So it trades the magnesium for this toxic element, and then it safely excretes it from the body. So that's what makes this really a game changer in the detox industry. It's something that can be taken on a regular basis without stressing out the body because it's not depleting essential nutrients when used properly. It's just binding to this toxic stuff selectively. It's absolutely incredible. It's just revolutionary, but it has to be used properly, which we're going to talk about. Broad spectrum. We focus on heavy metals, but we really, when we're detoxing, we want to work on everything, right? Because if we're just focusing on heavy metals, we're missing out on a lot of things, and it's going to be a less efficient detox because we want to bind back to level 1. We want to bind those daily dose toxins. So zeolite binds to ammonia. It binds to urea, 2 of those metabolic waste products. It binds to mycotoxins we might be exposed to on a daily basis. It binds to excess histamine, free radicals, the heavy metals, all these things. So it's really doing an incredible job binding to the daily dose toxins, the level 1 toxicity, and that just frees up so much detox energy and just reduces the burden on the body and allows the body to naturally start getting to the deep level stuff. So that's why one of the reasons I think it's so effective is that not only is it great for heavy metals, but it's great for so many other toxic elements that it's just able to really move the needle a lot. And one thing to consider is zeolite is a class of a mineral. So there's lots of different types of naturally occurring zeolites out there, and most of them are not going to be safe for human consumption. They might be used for, industrial purposes and various things. So don't just go and buy zeolite. That I want to make that very clear. There's specific forms that have been studied for human consumption. They have to go through very strict manufacturing processes as well. And so here's kind of what it looks like. Zeolite is a big mineral. So when it's mined, it looks like this huge rock. And the zeolite we're going to be talking about looks like this. It's this very fine powder, and it's kind of incredible. It's a flour texture, and a lot of people think it's so fine they don't realize it came from this huge like mineral rock like structure. So what I like to say is it's a solution from nature supercharged by science, right? So they took this incredible God-given therapy from the earth, and then it's been able to be just so advanced. The manufacturing is so advanced, we're able to take this and make it into a fine powder that allows it to be just so therapeutic. So science and superfoods equal solutions. Kind of cool there. All right, let's talk about the benefits of zeolite. So of course, detox, that's what we're talking about. That's kind of what it's famous for. Heavy metals specifically, really good at binding ammonia, mold toxins, histamine, all sorts of stuff. But there's a number of other benefits that we found that are pretty substantial, including just immune regulation, right? And one of the original companies I started was all about the science of basically immune regulation. And we were using some really advanced stuff, very expensive, very advanced immune regulators. And the challenge is when you have toxic elements that are stressing out the immune system constantly, you can take these very expensive immune regulators all day long, which are helpful, but it's not getting to the root cause. If you don't remove the source of the immune response, then you're going to have to take them forever and they're still going to be limited. So I found zeolite actually, when used properly, to be a better immune regulator than even all the fancy immune regulators I used to promote. Very interesting, but I like to say it calms the storm in the body, right? So a lot of people, they're so overburdened with toxicity that their system is constantly fighting. Their immune system is constantly overstimulated. And when they take the zeolite, it just goes and binds to all this toxic stuff. There's this calming effect because it just reduces the burden on the body. They just feel amazing right away. So just immune system regulation is a huge benefit. People, one of the main things they report is they just never get sick anymore after they start taking it. It helps with all sorts of immune related things. Gut health. Interestingly, a lot of people, most people, they take it for detox because that's what it's famous for. But a lot of people stay on it because of what it does to their digestion. I mean, people with chronic constipation for years, they start taking it and they start having regular bowel movements and they can't believe it. Just unexpected side, benefits. And even people with diarrhea, it helps regulate, firm things up. So diarrhea, it can help firm things up. Constipation, it can help get things moving. It's just because it's reducing inflammation in the digestive tract. I think that's really what it comes down to, because these heavy metals and toxic elements are so irritating to the gut lining and even the immune system. Most of the immune system is located in the gut. So the gut and the immune system are closely related, but just the number of benefits that come from zeolite beyond detox are incredible. But just removing all these toxic elements alone is going to have profound effects, because once your body is able to regain control after it removes these toxic things, the body just starts naturally going to balance. So all sorts of stuff starts working out better. It's also an antioxidant, which is interesting. You've got traditional antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin E that scavenge free radicals by donating an electron, and it stabilizes them. So free radicals are these unstable structures, and they wreak havoc. If there's too many of them, they result in oxidative stress, and that's accelerated aging and inflammation and just cell damage. So that's where antioxidants can be helpful. Zeolite works in a different way. It actually traps free radicals in its cage, opposed to donating an electron. So different mechanism, really incredible. But in addition to just scavenging the free radical, it can help reduce the production of them. Because when you have things like heavy metals and toxic elements wreaking havoc in your body, that results in an increased production of free radicals and oxidative stress, which equals accelerated aging, and who wants that? Then as you remove those things with the zeolite, the body stops producing as much free radicals, and then you don't even need as many antioxidants because your body's natural antioxidant capacity is able to take control. So it's, for anti-aging, I'd say it's probably the best single supplement you could take, in my opinion. Of course, I'm going to be a little biased because I love this stuff. I take tons of it every single night, and I'm going to keep taking it forever. I've got my family on it, etc. But I've honestly found it to work better than antioxidant supplements and other things for anti-aging and nutrient absorption. So if you're taking, even if you're eating quality food, you're taking whole food supplements, you're doing everything right, a lot of times these nutrients, these minerals and vitamins are not going to be absorbing or being utilized by the body properly if you've got toxicity, especially heavy metals present. So with heavy metals, they're competing for space with essential nutrients in your body. And you could take these nutrients all day long, but if the heavy metal's there, they're probably not going to be absorbing because the heavy metal is a placeholder and it's just taking the place where the minerals should be absorbed. So just by removing the heavy metals, a lot of people's nutrient status greatly increases because now they're absorbing what they're getting from food. Because for me, it's like you're taking all this fancy stuff, all these great supplements, and then you find out that they're not absorbing and not working. It's very irritating, right? Because we're putting a lot of money into it, a lot of effort. So that's why the detox is really step one. Get the stuff out with the bad. So then when you take the good stuff, it absorbs and gets to where it needs to be. So we've got this incredible product, Zeolite. Now, is it safe? That's the question, right? We're talking about, taking this thing for multiple months, and is it safe? So it is a gentle detox. It's the gentlest, safest, and most effective detox product that I've come across when used properly, which we're going to get into because it absolutely has to be used properly. But it is gentle. There's published data on it, such as this study, which is kind of an overview of a lot of the data of the clinical research on this specific type of zeolite that we're using that's proven safe for human consumption. It shows that it doesn't deplete nutrient status. It shows that, it's effective for all sorts of stuff, really no concerns at all. Really, really safe stuff, which is important because detox traditionally is considered to be, kind of violent, kind of stressful on the body. So if we can detox in a gentle way, that not only is gentle, but is more effective and a faster detox than the harsh methods, it's incredible. And that's one thing I think can be misleading because people get these reactions and they're like, oh, the detox is working. It's working super fast and it's working great, but really it's just inefficient. And you detox faster and more efficiently when you have less symptoms. So it's kind of the opposite of what people think. And we're going to kind of get into that a little bit. An important note here is that don't take this information and think it applies to all zeolite products because they're so different, the zeolite products. It's not like some things where they're all pretty similar. This is completely different. When you've got zeolite as a class of mineral, there's all sorts of different types. You've got synthetic versions, you've got natural versions, you've got lab. There's just a lot of types. So this information, it absolutely does not apply to all zeolite products. It's going to apply to ZeoCharge, right? ZeoCharge is what we have experience with. That's the top quality zeolite product on the market. And that's what we're going to talk about here. So it's a purified Clinoptilolite zeolite. Clinoptilolite is the form used for human consumption. And it's proven to be safe and effective. And that's the key, right? So in terms of proof, basically, there's a lot of general statements and data made from various zeolite products, but this is the only one really that has the proof that it can offer a full body detox. It is the only one for sure that can show that it offers a full body, all 3-level detox, and it can do so safely and effective. And there was a full case studies program conducted for 6 months prior to launch of this product, just to prove that it was safe and to show what it could do, just so there wouldn't be false claims made because, that's awesome about this product as well. All right, and safe at high doses. So that's really key because in order to really get to the deeply stored stuff, a lot of times relatively high doses are needed to get to level 3, especially mercury, things in the organs. And so of course we have to consider, is it safe in that? And it is safe. So the case studies once again went over very high doses, even higher doses than what we're going to be discussing here. And there was no issues with any concerns and actually improved mineral and vitamin status, even at incredibly high doses. I've personally taken an entire jar a day before for 10 days in a row. And that's a lot. That's a big thing of powder. I've taken an entire jar for 10 days in a row, did before and after testing, no concerns at all. So that was just me. I mean, take that for it. It's just me, 10 days. But there was a bunch of people in the case studies, no issues at all, absolutely fantastic. So this is ZeoCharge from Zeolite Labs. So in the case studies, it was proven to reduce tissue levels of 15 toxic metals. Incredible, right? So it was only tested for 15 heavy metals, right? And it was able to reduce all 15 heavy metals. And this is my company. I don't know if I mentioned that. So I developed this. So this is through Zeolite Labs, my most recent company. And this was kind of the culmination of all the information that in research I had done on detox and got into Zeolite. And then this is like the next generation version of the Zeolite. So I want to throw that out there, just make that out there, disclaimer. So, but the case studies program, we proved it was able to reduce tissue levels of 15 toxic metals, right? The only company that can prove that. Most of them are all speculation, just assuming it's working. We can prove a full body detox, the only one in the world that can do that, and selective. So we can prove that it's able to do so without depleting any essential nutrients or vitamins from the body. Really cool stuff. And it's effective and efficient. And the cool thing is people can take it without the symptoms. That's what really sets it apart from other detoxes. I mean, people that are too sick to detox, that have tried everything, have been able to take it with no issues, and we have testing to back up that it's actually working. It's just a complete game changer. Even when we did the case studies, I honestly didn't really know what to expect. I kind of had an idea, but I was blown away by the results. They were way more impressive than I even imagined they would be. I was actually shocked. So pleasantly surprised, of course. And so were all the people in the case studies program and everyone that's taken it since. But incredible product, ZeoCharge. And the two most important things when you're taking a Zeolite product are to get the two Qs, the proper quality and the proper quantity. If you don't have both of those, you're not going to get the best results at all. So quality, number one, right? So there's a number of good quality products on the market. Most of them are not. I would stay away from most, but there are a couple good ones, quality. But then quantity is also super important. If you don't take it at the right dose, it can be a very stressful experience. And we're going to get into it, but quality, and you can get those with these products. So that's what we're going to talk about here. First of all, what are people saying? James says, I absolutely love what you've done with Zeolite. Grateful for your dedication and hard work, right? So some people, they've tried a bunch of Zeolite products, they've done research and listened to podcasts, etc. And then they see what we've done at Zeolite Labs with ZeoCharge and some of the research and the education we put out, and it's kind of game changing, just because it's just a whole nother level of detox. Mandy says, I kid you not, this product has changed my life. For the first time, I'm mold free. I can prove this through my before and after organic acids test. Perfect. So that's another one. A lot of people use it for mycotoxins. We're talking heavy metals, but ZeoCharge is incredible for mold toxicity. And a lot of times when you have, there's what I kind of call the 4M spectrum: molds, metal, magnetic field, and microbes. A lot of times once you get one, you kind of become sensitive to mold and magnetic fields, and then you develop the microbial issues as well, because the opportunity's there for them to thrive. So a lot of people have all four. And this is incredible kind of at dealing with that spectrum of people. Like the people on the Lyme disease spectrum, people that are very with that kind of condition respond very well to ZeoCharge. And then Brandon says, I wish the product was available 20 years ago. My quality of life has improved significantly in a very short period of time. I've tried several other Zeolite products, but none of them have been nearly as effective as your product. So it's true. There's just a lot out there. With a lot of products, I do say, you can do some price shopping, and sometimes there's a lot of good options, but with Zeolite, you really have to be careful because they're all so different. And ZeoCharge really is completely different than anything else in the market, and it's really not even close. So let's go over the options for different Zeolite products on the market. You've got the powders, you've got the liquids and the nanos, and you've got ZeoCharge. Traditionally, all the Zeolite products were just in powder form because Zeolite is a mineral. It's micronized or processed into smaller particles, and then it's sold as a powder. And then after that came this liquid movement and nano, where they were taking the powder and just making it a little bit smaller, and then they mixed it with water, and that's where liquid and nano zeolites come from. There's no such thing as liquid zeolite in itself. It's just the powders mixed with water, but a lot of them are smaller particle sizes, which has its advantages as well. So those were really marketed for full body detox, where the powders are more just staying in the gut. And then ZeoCharge is a combination of both. So it's basically combining the small particles found in the liquids and then the larger ones in the powders as well. So you get the full effect. So when we're looking at a zeolite product, we really want something that offers a full body cellular detox because we're really going for those deeply stored level 3 metals. And we want something that's selective and efficient detox and natural. So ZeoCharge checks all of these boxes. When it comes to the liquids and the nanos, they're small particle sizes, so potentially going to be offering a full body detox. Although it's possible, just because there's such low dose, that it might not be able to get to the full body because, and we're going to go over dose in a bit, and that's one of the big things, but if all of the zeolite gets used up in the digestive tract, there's not going to be any leftover zeolite to make it to be absorbed into the bloodstream to offer the full body detox in that way. So that is interesting. So even if they're all marketed for, full body detox, being able to do, go anywhere in the body and detox, but it has to be absorbed just like anything else. So that's something to consider. All right. Selective binder. Most of them are, but the thing about the liquids and nanos is some of them are synthetic or lab grown. They're man-made, so they're not a natural zeolite, and then they're not going to have that same ability to selectively bind, and then they become more stressful. They're not an efficient detox, and some of those are not natural. So something to be aware of. I really don't recommend any nano zeolites. I really don't recommend any liquid zeolites either. And one thing is that a lot of the liquids that are marketed as nano or just small particle sizes are just the regular, pretty poor quality powdered products, and they're just mixing it with water and are referring to it as a liquid or a nano. And in reality, it's literally just a micro dose of the powder, and it's just for marketing purposes. And I mean, there's some pretty big brands that are doing that, and they've gotten a lot of people on the products. It's kind of interesting, but they're just really not good products in my opinion. You've got the powders that are, larger particle sizes designed to trap stuff in the gut, but they're natural, so selective could be an efficient detox, but they might not be getting to all three levels of detox and natural. So I would recommend the powders as the second best option, but the ZeoCharge, which is a powder, it's just a much finer powder, and it just combines the best of everything. You've got the small particles, the larger particles, just to trap the range of various toxic elements that are in our bodies. Another thing, the powders are pretty terrible generally to consume because they're so grainy, like sandy. The ZeoCharge isn't like that. It's so finely ground that it's a flour-like powder that it's not grainy. Like with the powders, sometimes it's almost like you are at the beach and you got a mouthful of sand. So a lot of people are very pleasantly surprised when they try the ZeoCharge. There's a testimonial from Greta, who's actually a YouTube influencer who tries a bunch of products and writes reviews and discusses them. And she's tried a number of different zeolites, and then she started on ZeoCharge. And here's what she had to say: I can definitely feel the difference. Other zeolite products I've tried in the past were more grainy. We're not mixing with water as well. Your product tastes a lot better and doesn't have any side effect. It's great. So she's into it, and she's definitely against the liquids and the nanos. She was trying other powders, though, wasn't really getting great success. So she's been talking about ZeoCharge a lot. This is really important. It's involving detoxing the brain, and this is where one of the main marketing campaigns is for the liquid and the nano zeolite products, because they're saying that the particles are so small that they're able to go into the brain and remove toxic elements. And what we need to understand is that the best way to detox the brain is not for zeolite or for anything else to actually go into the brain and grab things, because do we really want zeolite in the brain? Not really, in my opinion. So really what we want is for the body to naturally release at its own pace toxic elements from the brain through its natural detox functions, like through the lymphatic system. We don't want to be trying to go in and rip things out. One, if the body does not want to let go, if the brain cells, it's not going to let go. And two, it's just going to be a lot safer, gentler, and more efficient for the body to do the work for you. So we want to focus back on level one, where we're removing the things that are in the gut, in the bloodstream, being transported and being processed by the body. We want to focus on detoxing those, making room, enhancing your body's detox energy, and then the body will start naturally releasing the metals from the brain and the other organs. So that's what we have to consider. There is some concern as well with safety with some of the liquids and nanos. A number of practitioners have expressed concerns that potentially the zeolite could get trapped in the brain or something like that. So we don't have anything in that nano range that's going to be able to go into the brain, because we don't want anything that small. One, because of the safety concerns, and two, because the particles are just so small that they can't trap a lot of the toxic elements we're trying to trap as well. So the big issue generally there with the concern is the synthetic zeolites. Definitely not great, because there's actually research indicating that synthetic zeolite can accumulate in your body. Whereas all the research on the natural zeolite, which is all done in the powdered form, shows that it doesn't accumulate and it's safe. So really, that's where we have to understand, there's a big difference between products. Definitely want to stay away from the lab grown or synthetic zeolites. And then the nanos, there's just really no research on. So it's kind of hard to say, but we just really I just don't agree with that approach, trying to forcefully remove things from the brain. It's better just to remove things from all over the body, and the body will release metals from the brain at its own pace. So many detox protocols just don't work. And it's because detox it's just hard. It's harder than we think, right? So a lot of them, when I say they don't work, I'm talking about the deep level detox, right? Most detox protocols, most quality detox protocols are going to be helpful in some capacity. They're generally going to be helping with the level 1 toxicity and the level 2, and just, the daily exposure and some of the general tissue. But they usually are not going to be able to get to the level 3 deep stored metals. And that's what we really want. We want to get the mercury, we want to get the metals out of the brain and out of the organs, because that's where they're really causing a lot of damage. So the problem with a lot of the protocols is, one, they're just too stressful on the body, right? They're just stirring stuff up. They're not an efficient detox. They're only binding to specific things or trying to stimulate your body's response to release metals from certain areas. But if it's not cleaning up the level 1 and making room for those metals and other toxic elements, the body's just not going to be able to receive them, and it becomes too stressful, and it's just a very inefficient detox, and the body might close its detox pathways, right? So it's all about the body naturally releasing these metals, right? It's not about zeolite or chelator or anything else going in and grabbing things. We really want the body to comfortably release metals at its own pace, because that's the best, safest, and gentlest way, and even the fastest way to do it as well. So there's a few other options for detox. So one, we got ZeoCharge, right? The full body detox, selective binder, efficient, natural, checks all the boxes. But then you've got things like synthetic chelators, which have been used for a number of years. And they're not natural, for one. They can't be used long term because they're so stressful. They're not selective, so they're going to be grabbing onto your essential nutrients. You have to go on and off them because they're just really harsh on the body. Most people can't tolerate them. And we've just found ZeoCharge to be so much more effective. One, it detoxes even faster than the synthetic chelators, and it's just gentle and you can stay on it, where the synthetic chelators you can't. So just totally different. And I think one of the main advantages, synthetic chelators are really designed for specific metals. So you've got, very specific chelators, like for lead, like things like EDTA, and they can be potentially beneficial, but it's not taking into account all the other toxic elements in the body, and it's not binding to any of those things like the ammonia or the metabolic waste products, the histamine, the free radicals, any of that stuff, the mycotoxins, the radioactive materials. So as you start removing lead, then basically you have all of this other stuff that got stirred up, and now your body has to deal with it, and now you have symptoms. And some of that redistributes and finds a new home. So ZeoCharge is nice because it goes in, stirs stuff up, but it's such a broad spectrum binder that it binds to all of those other things that were released, and that's why it's so gentle. Whereas a lot of other detox agents go in, stir stuff up, they just make a mess, and the body has to deal with it, and that's where you get the symptoms. Then you've got all sorts of other stuff, natural, unnatural, the homeopathic remedies, all sorts of stuff. And a lot of them, they're good things. I'm not saying these are not great. It's just that we haven't found them to be nearly as effective as the ZeoCharge, mostly because they're just too stressful on the body. They can't be sustained, and they're limited in what they can detox because the body does not feel comfortable removing the deeply stored metals when it's under a stressful detox experience. So some of them are natural, some aren't, but they're generally not efficient. A lot of them are not going to be selective, and a lot of them, maybe they do some full body detox, maybe they don't, maybe for a short period of time, and then the body shuts down its pathways. Hard to say. So it's just, that's why ZeoCharge is the way to go. And the goal, once again, is to work with the body, not to fight against it. Most detox protocols are fighting against the body. ZeoCharge works with it, allows the body to detox at its own pace. All right, let's look at a case study here. 38-year-old female, and very interesting case. She was very health savvy, taking a lot of supplements, going to some top functional medicine doctors around the country for Lyme treatment and for all sorts of a number of issues. But she was doing relatively well. But one of the symptoms that she noticed that just would not go away, and it was there for years, was this chronic eye puffiness, where to the point where she was almost considering surgery. And it was just terrible. And she'd been on all sorts of stuff. None of it helped. She was taking charcoal, activated charcoal, bentonite clay, aloe vera, even prescription cholestyramine for mold toxins, etc. And nothing really was helping with that at all. She didn't notice a difference in any of those things. And she started off, and she was very concerned about detox reactions. And that's why we started her on a high dose of 6 scoops per day, which we're going to talk about the dosing, because the higher dose is gentler than the low dose. It's a paradox with dosing that most people don't understand. And she was only about 110 pounds, so pretty light as well, but taking the full 6 scoops. And we tested her after 2 months and 29.2% reduction in aluminum. And she started, after the 3rd day of taking the 6 scoops of the ZeoCharge, the eye puffiness went away, and she couldn't believe it. And after about 2 weeks, she went off of it for a couple of days, the puffiness came back. And then she went on it again, puffiness went away. So there was something, probably a daily dose toxicity or something your body couldn't handle, that was causing this chronic eye puffiness or inflammation of some sort. And when she took the ZeoCharge, it was able to remove that from the body, calm the system down, and she didn't have the puffiness anymore. All these other binders were not able to do it. So we don't know what it was binding to. We know aluminum was an issue because she had high aluminum levels, and that went down by almost 30% in 2 months. So maybe that had something to do with it. Otherwise, it could have been unrelated. But that was a good case study because she was already doing a lot of things right, eating pristine, taking all these supplements, working with top functional medicine doctors. But the ZeoCharge was really the only thing that ever made a difference in the eye puffiness. Now we're going to talk about the dosing strategy for ZeoCharge and Zeolite, because it's different than with pretty much everything else. Where it's a paradox. So with most things, you start with a low dose and you work your way up to see if you tolerate it. With ZeoCharge, you actually start with a higher dose and you work your way down, because the higher dose offers a more efficient detox and it's actually gentler than the low dose. So there's 10 milligrams of a Zeolite, a good quality, like a ZeoCharge. 10 milligrams is actually more likely to cause a detox reaction like a headache than taking 10,000 milligrams, right? And there's a whole 14-page document I've written explaining this in great detail, which I'm not going to go into, but hundreds of people that have tried the microdose strategy and then have gotten detox reactions like headaches have then switched to a much higher dose, no reactions at all. And it shocks them every time. They never believe me when I tell them this, but it always works. So the higher dose is just more effective. It's more efficient. What happens is when you take a low dose, it only takes a very low dose of Zeolite to really stir stuff up because it's so powerful. So it goes in, it might break open biofilms and disrupt, some microbial activity and release all this. It basically makes a mess. You take a little bit, it goes in, stirs stuff up, makes a mess. Then your body has to deal with it. That's where you get the reactions. It kind of overburdens the body. It's a stressful experience. When you take the higher dose, you go in, you stir stuff up, but there's enough Zeolite cages available to clean up the mess it makes. So basically what you want is to take a high enough dose to go in, sop up all the circulating toxicity present, and have extra Zeolite cages available for anything that gets dumped into circulation level 1 through the process. So any detox stress, as I call it, that occurs, you want to have excess Zeolite available on the sidelines to go and help with that. So very interesting stuff. It's crucially important though. And the more sensitive you are to detox reactions and to detox in general, the more important it is to actually start with the higher dose. And starting with the low dose, I highly do not recommend. It's just much more stressful. And this is one of the reasons why the liquids cause so many detox reactions, because they're just very low dose Zeolite, where the higher doses just work much better. Not only are they gentler and safer for the body, but they're much more effective. So there's the binding dose and then there's the detox dose. So the binding dose is when we're going in and we're just grabbing to things in level 1, the current exposure, and that can be very beneficial. That can make us feel better because it's calming the storm a little bit in the body. It's reducing the immune response because you're binding some stuff. But those lower doses generally aren't what I consider the detox dose, which is when you're getting to level 3, the deeply stored metals. So some other binders as well, things like the charcoals and the bentonite clays and various things, those are binders, right? So they're going in and they're binding to things in level 1, which can be helpful, although can't be taken long-term generally because they could be stripping essential nutrients, etc. but they're not generally going to be going and offering the full body detox. With ZeoCharge, we get the binding effect and we get the detox effect, but it has to be at the proper dose. So let's say you take 10 milligrams and it goes in and it binds to some stuff and it makes you feel a little better, but then it's not getting to the deep level. So that's one scenario. Another scenario is you take 10 milligrams and you feel absolutely awful because it just stirred so much stuff up. So everyone responds a little bit differently, but the general rule is if you get a reaction when you're taking it, you actually want to take more, not less. And that alleviates or completely eliminates the detox symptoms. Very interesting stuff. So one, it's gentler because it's a more efficient detox. And two, you want to take a higher dose because you want to make sure you're actually getting to all 3 levels of detox and not just binding. Dose is just absolutely crucial. Here's a testimonial from Emily. She says, wow, you're onto something with the higher doses. I've tried Zeolite in the past, 2 liquids and 1 powder, and didn't notice much of anything, but now with a much higher dose, I feel it's working. I noticed detox symptoms with 10 grams daily, but felt much better with 30 grams daily. It's been quite a healing journey, and I'm so grateful to have found your website and videos. I'm learning so much. So in this scenario, it's interesting because she had tried a couple of liquids and a powder. She didn't notice anything. It's because they probably weren't detoxing her at all. They were such a low dose, they were probably just binding a few things in level 1. She's not noticing a difference. She's not getting to the deep level. When she started on 10 grams, which is thousands of times the dose of the liquids, and even the powders, it's much higher generally. She started on 10 grams and she noticed some of the detox symptoms. So that's an indicator that it was actually starting the detox process. But when she went to 30 grams, she felt better because that's when she needed a higher dose to offer a more efficient detox. So basically the super low dose, like the liquids and this other powder, doing nothing. 10 grams was detoxing her, but it was inefficient. That's why she was getting symptoms. 30 grams was still detoxing her, but it was an efficient detox. And this happens all the time. So comparing the liquid to nano to ZeoCharge in terms of dose, we've got the liquids, which have usually around 1 to 5 milligrams. Sometimes they'll go up a little bit higher, 25. Sometimes the liquids are less than 1 milligram. You've got the nanos, which are less than 1 milligram. You have to pay attention. MG is milligram, MCG is microgram. There's 1,000 micrograms in 1 milligram. So 300 micrograms is actually only 1/3 of a milligram. So almost all of the nanos, if they usually don't list the dose on the label, but they're almost all 300 micrograms per serving, which is incredibly low considering it's 1/3 of a milligram. For reference, ZeoCharge is 5,000 milligrams per serving. So you can just see where even if you have a really high quality liquid zeolite or a nano zeolite, in order to get the proper quantity, it's basically going to be impossible because you just can't get a high enough dose. Because we're looking at 5,000, and some people, what we recommend is really starting off on about 30,000 for their sensitive people to make sure you're getting that deep level detox. A lot of people don't even really start getting to the deep level detox until they hit 10,000 milligrams. So while the liquids and nanos can potentially be helpful for binding, in order to get to the deep level, you just wouldn't be able to take enough. So that's why it's all about quality and quantity. And with ZeoCharge, you're able to do both. With the others, you generally can't do it. So the approach is take more, not less. Here's what Carter has to say. Great product as long as you get the right dose. I started with 1 teaspoon and felt way worse. I almost stopped taking it, but then read the theory about taking larger doses. I changed the dose to 6 tablespoons per day, and all of the negative symptoms went away, and I started feeling way better. Read the higher dose theory before starting, right? So he was doing a teaspoon. He moved to 6 tablespoons. That's 18 teaspoons. So he went 18 times the dose, and he was feeling terrible on the low dose, and he started feeling way better on the higher dose, right? So it's just over and over and over this happens, and it just surprises people, but it just is what it is. Another case study, we have a 53-year-old female here. She had started on a nano zeolite at some point, and a very popular nano zeolite product, very reputable, and felt incredibly terrible. She couldn't continue after a few days because she just felt, she tried to power through it. I think it was day 4 or 5. She had to stop because just incredible joint pain, incredible irritability, constant headaches, just feeling absolutely awful. She couldn't continue, so she stopped it. Then she came across ZeoCharge, and we connected, and she wasn't aware of the dosing strategy at this point. So she started on a super low dose of ZeoCharge and felt terrible. Actually, what she did, what she told me, was that she took a scoop of the ZeoCharge, which is the 5,000 milligrams, mixed it with a glass of water, but she only took a sip. Instead of doing the whole thing, she took 1 sip. And she said she had the same reactions as she did when she did the nano zeolite. Felt absolutely terrible. So I said, okay, well, you took way too low of a dose. You went in and you stirred stuff up, but it wasn't an efficient detox. So then what she did was she took a high dose. She did 6 scoops. That's 30,000 milligrams, and she felt amazing. And she's been on it ever since. And she just keeps taking 6 scoops because she just thinks it's the best thing ever. So it just shows you it's not that the detox reactions mean that it's working better in some way. It just means that it's an inefficient detox. So you can take a super low dose, like a sip of ZeoCharge, and you're going to get the same reactions as the nanos and the liquid zeolites, just because you're getting a micro dose in both of those. You take a higher dose, you don't feel anything or you feel better. It doesn't mean the detox isn't working. It just means it's working more efficiently. So there's another example there. All right, invest in detox. It's one of the best things we can invest in the 21st century. We just have to be detoxed, and we have to be taking control of our health. If we're not detoxing, we're probably accumulating toxic elements, and it's going to catch up to us sooner or later, right? So the things we have to consider is, one, the daily detox and the deep level detox. So most of the detox protocols and healthy living and, cleanses, those things, and just various supplements are going to be great for a daily detox, but they're almost never going to get to that deep level because it's just so hard to get those deeply stored metals out. So we want to consider both things. After we do the deep level detox, then it's okay to, the daily detox is important so we don't accumulate anything else further. But the missing link in detox protocols is this deep level detox. Most people think they're getting it. Most companies claim they're able to offer it, but generally they're not. So what we really want to do is protect the organs, right? When we have these metals stored in kidneys, liver, brain, all over the body, it's not great, right? Deteriorating the organs over time. We want to get those things out. That's level 3. And it's going to slow down the aging process, right? We know that heavy metals contribute to oxidative stress, just accelerated aging. Not great. We want to get them out of the body, right? So one of the best things we could do, one of the best investments, in my opinion, is to get these heavy metals out of organs, out of the body, and just get as healthy as we can now so we don't have to deal with it later. We want to focus on a detox that works. We don't want to waste money on various cleanses and supplements and things that potentially are helping with level 1, maybe level 2, but aren't getting to the deep level stuff. We want to make sure it's working, right? So we want to remove the deeply stored stuff, the mercury and the lead, and we want it to be safe and gentle. And we want it to get to all 3 levels of the detox. Here's a really interesting case study. This individual, it's just going to show that detox is much harder than we think, right? So this individual had 14 amalgam fillings, so very mercury toxic. She was taking the strongest known chelator, synthetic chelator, and this was specifically designed to remove mercury from your body, from tissue. And she was also taking 2 scoops of ZeoCharge. So we figured, okay, this was probably, the best protocol available. You've got the ZeoCharge, and then you've got this thing specifically for mercury. Fantastic. She's going to get it out. She did this for 2 years. And when we tested her, we found that she wasn't detoxing any mercury. And the whole time she didn't feel better. The symptoms weren't improving, wasn't really noticing anything. She was just assuming the metals were leaving her body. After retesting, we found that she was detoxing most metals, but the one she wasn't detoxing was mercury. And the minerals were still messed up. The vitamins weren't good. And what we did, and this was absolutely mind-blowing, but then this case study alone really helped me understand that the body's in control of detox, and it's not about going in and trying to rip out metals with these chelators. It's about the body naturally releasing, and especially in someone with this much toxicity, it's up to the body. And even 2 scoops a day is just, I discovered that for some people, it's just not enough, and that's 10,000 milligrams or 10 grams of ZeoCharge. So after what we did was had her go off of the chelator, because we figured it was just too stressful on her body and that was potentially preventing the body from detoxing. And we had her, even though it was designed specifically to go into organs and tissue and remove mercury, it just wasn't doing it because her body apparently did not want to let go. And if you fight against the body, you're going to lose. And your cells are just not going to let go of mercury if they don't want to let go. So what we did, went off of that, had her double the dose of ZeoCharge. So she ended up taking 4, and then ended up actually at 6 scoops. So she was between 4 and 6 scoops per day for 30 days, and then retested, and bam, the mercury started being detoxed during that 30-day period. And what was absolutely stunning was her vitamin status absolutely skyrocketed. Her minerals started balancing, and this is after 30 days. And she actually noticed symptoms improvement for the first time in that 2-year period but it was all dose dependent. So potentially probably what was happening was the 2 scoops of the ZeoCharge was a binding dose. So it was binding to things, kind of a daily dose toxin, but it wasn't able to get to the deep level mercury. And that was the whole point of taking it. So it took her between 4 and 6 scoops per day to get to that deep level detox. And the chelator was doing absolutely nothing the whole time, which we didn't know. And then she actually started seeing improvement. Her nervous system started calming down. Her eyesight started improving. She was getting all these improvement. And it continued over the months as she continued. And she continued on the 6 scoops for a number. And she's actually still taking 6 scoops. This is like 2 years ago. So she absolutely loves it. So that's it's just the point of this was detox is harder than you think. You can be doing all the right things, spending a ton of money on chelation, on the highest quality things, but if your body doesn't want to let go of the mercury, it's not going to let go. So what we've done is basically developed a protocol that guarantees, as much as you can guarantee, that the metals are going to be leaving the deeply stored areas. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So ZeoCharge, one, we need the right product when it comes to detox, right? So ZeoCharge, that is the product that we need. And then we need to use it properly, right? So the dose is crucial. So you could take ZeoCharge, as we just saw, at too low of a dose. And although it's helpful because it's binding, it's not going to be getting to the deep level. It might be in some people, but we just don't know. That's why you always want to start with a high dose to ensure you're getting to the deep level. And then over time, you won't need as much. So here's the proven strategy that we've developed after all the case studies and after everything I've learned over the years about, health and detox. We've developed this to be able to remove these deeply stored metals from the body. So what we know is that 6 scoops per day is basically a guaranteed deep level detox. Every single person we've tested that was on 6 scoops per day, which is 30,000 milligrams, detoxed every single metal we tested for. So that's where we're at. We're at 6. 4 often does it. 3 often does it. 2, even 2 usually does it in about 90% of people. But those, people that have the higher toxic burdens, you just need more. That's why we know 6. Everyone that gets to 6 scoops per day, they're going to be detoxing all 3 levels of detox, even mercury, which is the most stubborn metal. And we know that it's best to actually just take 1 dose per day. And we discovered this from the case studies. So when we split if you do 3 scoops twice per day, it's actually much worse than taking 6 scoops all at once, because the key is to get a high enough amount on each dose. It's not cumulative throughout the day. And when people were taking lower doses throughout the day or taking a bunch of other detox stuff all throughout the day, it actually was becoming stressful on the body and it was limiting the detox. So what we found is 6 scoops once per day is a surefire way to remove these metals from the body. And it's a lot easier too. People like it because they're not taking stuff all the time. And then we know the key is if you do experience a detox reaction, which most of the time is going to be a headache, that's the most immediate reaction. And that usually happens within an hour of taking the product. Then, you want to take more, not less. So generally you can either take more immediately or just the next day, instead of taking 6, you can actually just take 9. And then you can work your way down. So 9, 8, 7 after a couple of days. You don't need to stay on the high dose. Sometimes right starting off, when you start moving these metals that haven't moved for 30 years, you might need a little bit higher because you've released all this mercury and you need more of the binding capacity. So that's one thing to consider. But we know those are 3 things we learned. Once per day is fantastic. That's the best way to do it. 6 scoops per day is basically guaranteed to detox. And then if you have a reaction, then you just want to take more temporarily and don't take less. Just for reference for dosing, when you take the 6 scoops of ZeoCharge, it's exactly 100,000 times the dose of the nano zeolites per serving, right? So those are 300 micrograms, which is less than 1 milligram. This is 30,000 milligrams, exactly 100,000 dose. So it just shows you that those are ridiculously small amounts. And I don't think anyone was ever designed to take doses that small. It just goes in, it's just not enough zeolite. So you can have the best quality zeolite, but if you're not getting it at the right dose, you're going to be very limited, especially with the full body detox. So when it takes up to some people 6 scoops, the people that have these deeply stored metals, then you can imagine the challenge with the nanos and the liquid zeolites. So just wanted to say that. Healthier you get, the less you need, right? So someone that has a more complex health challenge is just going to need more than a healthy person. And as you start layering off the layers of toxicity, peeling them off, then you're not going to need as much. So you start high, you work your way down. This is especially great if you don't have access to regular testing. So if you can go and get tested, a tissue test with the illegal scan every single month while detoxing is fantastic, because you can actually determine, is it offering a full body detox or not? So maybe you don't need to start with the full 6 scoops. Maybe you just start with 2 scoops per day, and maybe that's enough. Maybe 1 scoop a day is enough, but you don't know unless you're testing every single month. And doing all that testing is going to be much more expensive than just going on the proven protocol to begin with. So that's kind of one of the reasons we developed it. We know that if you're doing 6 scoops, you're absolutely going to be detoxing all levels, because every single person that's ever been on that has been able to do so. And then if you want to get testing, it's always fine to kind of optimize the dose, but it's just an added expense. But that's why just the guaranteed approach is starting with the 6 scoops, doing this protocol, and you don't even have to do the testing at that point, because you can spend the money on the protocol and you don't have to worry about the testing. That's one of the reasons we developed it. People really like the concept, and it's worked really well for people. So it's 5 months. Month 1, you take 6 scoops per day. Second month, 5 scoops per day, and then you work your way down, 4, 3, 2. So after 5 months, you've gone through a total of 20 jars, because 6 scoops per day is a total of 6 jars per month. 5 scoops is 5 jars per month, etc. So you've gone through a total of 20 jars over 5 months. And the great news is that you can continue. So if you've been accumulating metals for 30 years, then you're not going to be able to get them all out of your body in 5 months, right? Just because your body, the longer you have been accumulating them, the longer they have been in there, the longer it's going to take to get rid of them. You're going to be able to get rid of a lot with this protocol, but you're not going to be able to get rid of them, all of them. I'm just going to be honest there. Now, the good news is, as you peel off these layers of toxicity, you continue to need less because you're getting healthier, your system's calming down, your detox energy is improving. You can continue taking lower doses, and you're still getting the deep level detox, which is great. So after the 5 months, you can just maintain for the next couple of years on 1 scoop per day, which is just 1 jar per month. And you should still be getting to the deep level detox, removing all those metals, because at this point, you're not going to need as high of a dose. And we do recommend just continuing taking 1 scoop, because we're always going to be exposed to these toxic elements. Even after we've removed everything from our body, we want to prevent the accumulation, and we want to just continue detoxing. Plus, it really just makes people feel good, and it's easy once per day. So that's our recommendation there. So let's go over some of the frequently asked questions for the Ultimate Zeolite Experience 5-month protocol. So number 1 is timing. When is the best time to take the ZeoCharge? And it can be taken any time of day. It can be taken in the morning, afternoon, evening, really whatever works best for your schedule. We haven't found a huge difference in when it is taken. And it can even be taken with food, which is nice. So you can take it with food on an empty stomach. It's kind of preference with, if you're worried about detox reactions, or if you do experience, mild detox reactions like a headache, I would recommend taking it later in the day after you have something in your stomach, because taking it first thing in the morning is more likely to cause a detox reaction. And I think that's likely because it has a stronger microbe cleansing effect at that point, and especially parasite cleansing effect, because the parasites, any cleanse when you're on an empty stomach is going to work a little more powerfully. So a number of people have taken it in the morning and have had some mild symptoms, then they take it in the afternoon or evening and they don't get the symptoms, even on the same dose. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I personally like taking it in the evening, a while after dinner, because that's when I'm going to be calmest. I'm pretty high energy during the day. And as I'm calmer, I have less going on in my body and I'm in a better position to detox. That's how I feel. And then I have kind of the night's sleep to help be detoxing as well. So I like it in the evening, about an hour after dinner, but you can take it at any point. We really haven't found a difference. Even people that take it with a meal, they're still getting to the deep level detox. And in the animal research with zeolite, it's always taken with the meal, because it's mixed in with the animal feed and it still improves the nutrient status of the animals. So you don't have to worry about it depleting any nutrient status, even with the food. I think it's just different. Whatever works for you in your schedule, I say just do that. You really want to find get it into your routine, take it the same time every day and find what works for you. And you don't really want to be skipping days. So just get in the groove with it, whatever works. That's what we recommend. How to take it. It's a powder. So generally you just mix it with water. So you just take your 6 scoops or 5, whatever dose you're on, and you just scoop it into a glass of water, usually, between 6 and 12 ounces. Some people It just kind of, you can kind of, gauge based on your, if you feel dehydrated, drink more water type of thing. Some people do 16 ounces of water. I usually do about 8 to 10 ounces of water with the 6 scoops. But whatever you feel is necessary there. So you just take the scoops, scoop it into water. I like to let it just sit there for about a minute or two, and then it kind of sinks to the bottom and dissolves. And then I just stir it, and then I drink it down. Right. So ideally, you're utilizing, it's a plastic scoop in the container. And then ideally, you're stirring it with a non-metal, because you don't really want to be stirring it with metal, because some of the zeolite might be attaching to potential loose metal ions on the spoon. So not a huge deal, but that's just one of those, best practices. Use a plastic or non-metal spoon to stir. So you could also mix it with other things. So it has a mild earthy taste. Most people are pleasantly surprised by it. It really doesn't taste bad at all. It's chalky, so it's got a chalky texture. So some people, if they try to mix it with like 3 ounces of water, it's a little thick. You just add more water and it tastes fine. If you're someone that's, pretty picky with taste and things, then one thing you can do, which I personally really like, is just to mix it in with like a blender bottle, just shake it up with some organic coconut milk, even unsweetened. I actually did that today, just as a treat, kind of treat myself. It's like a detox milkshake. You take the ZeoCharge, mix it in with the organic coconut milk, you shake it up, and it's really nice and thick. I think it tastes absolutely delicious. So that's one option. However you can get it down, go for it. Mix it with smoothies, whatever you want to do. You can, however you want to do it, go for it. And then people asking you, do I have to take breaks on this? And really, as long as everything's going well, you don't want to take a break. You want to take it every single day for the entire 5 months. With other detox protocols, you have to take breaks, but that's because they're stressful detoxes on the body. They're adding stress to the body, and then that kind of stress accumulates and you have to go off of it to let your body recover. With ZeoCharge, it's reducing the total stress load on the body while detoxing, so you don't have to go off of it. Right. So that's why it's fantastic. Now, let's say, for some reason you are experiencing some detox reactions, some headaches, and if you want to go off of it for a few days to feel like you want to recover, that's totally fine. Kind of listen to your body on that one. But as long as everything's going well and you're not experiencing symptoms, then just keep taking it, because you want to keep the detox pathways open, keep things flowing, and just taking it consistently is the best way to do that and to get the best results. So some people will ask, what if I have amalgam fillings still in my mouth? Is it okay to do the detox protocol? And I say absolutely. And these are probably the people that need to do it the most. And, there's a couple thoughts, like a lot of dentists will say, even the natural dentist and people will say that don't even bother detoxing until you've removed the fillings. And honestly, I think that's just absolutely ridiculous. And I think their logic is that, you have to remove the exposure, but when you remove the fillings, you're only removing the exposure. You're not doing anything to remove the internally stored mercury and other metals. So I think personally that everyone should go on a detox protocol before even considering removing the amalgams from their mouth, because you want to remove as much of the deeply stored metals from your body as possible before you go and remove them and have to deal with the stress of the removal. Because even if you're getting them removed properly, there's always going to be a little bit of a, metal stress that occurs because things just get stirred up, and you want to just put your body in the best position to handle that. So I would say absolutely, it's great for that. And a lot of people taking ZeoCharge have the amalgams. And then the other concern people express is, well, is the ZeoCharge going to go and, break apart the amalgam or something? It's not going to do that. If there is loose mercury ions that have become detached from the amalgam, then the ZeoCharge is probably going to bind to those, trap them, and excrete them out of the body. But you would want it to bind to those, because if the mercury particles, these ions, are loose from the amalgam itself, then they're just going to be leaching into your body and accumulating somewhere. So you want it to bind to those things, but it's not going to go. I've never heard of it going in and like destroying, deteriorating an amalgam in your mouth or something like that. So I've never had any concerns with that. And personally, I recommend anyone that has the amalgams, because we already know anyone that has the amalgams has a high level of mercury in their tissue and in their body. I think it's really important for those people to be on this protocol to remove as much mercury as possible. And then if you want to consider removing the amalgams at some point to reduce that exposure, that's great too. But I think step one is definitely going to be going in there and removing the stored metals. And people ask, well, can I take other supplements on this protocol? And yeah, so you can absolutely take other things. You can anything natural, whether an herbal remedy or homeopathic, or natural things can be taken even at the exact same time as ZeoCharge, because ZeoCharge is that selective binder where it's not going to be binding to these things. So absolutely, if you're taking various synthetic things or medications, then you just want to be aware. So with medications, one thing is antibiotics. Zeolite has been shown to bind to antibiotics. So let's say you do have to go on a 7 or 10 day antibiotic protocol during this 5-month protocol, then you'd probably want to stop taking the ZeoCharge during the 7 to 10 days of antibiotics, because you wouldn't want the zeolite to be binding to the antibiotics and making them less effective. So that's, or you could take it, different times in the day. So if you're taking the antibiotics in the morning, you could take the ZeoCharge at night. Just something to consider. If you're on medications that contain lithium or some sort of heavy metal, just consider that ZeoCharge is going to be binding to heavy metals. So you just want to be aware of those rare kind of situations where potentially there's a metal and an active ingredient in something. And at that point, you would just keep it in mind and probably take ZeoCharge not at the exact same time. So if there's ever a doubt with a supplement or something, and I really can't give medical advice and speak to the medications because there's not really research and a lot of research on interactions, but just it's a judgment call. If you're concerned with any sort of interactions, I would always just take it as far away as possible. Even with if there's some supplement even that you are concerned that zeolite might bind to, then just don't take it at the same time. Take one in the morning, take one in the evening, and that's my best recommendation with that. And then what to expect. So what I like to tell people is when you're removing the deeply stored heavy metals from your body, you either want to feel nothing or you want to feel better, right? What you really don't want to do is feel worse, because if you feel worse, while it is a sign that something is happening, it's a sign that stress is being added to the body and it's potentially, a less efficient detox. If you feel nothing, that's a sign that your body is responding very well to the detox. The metals are leaving the body without adding stress, and that's fantastic. Now, I know everyone wants to feel amazing right away, but when it comes to removing these deeply stored metals, a lot of times you're not going to feel amazing immediately, right? Because sometimes it's a longer process. It's more of a gradual improvement as you remove these things from organs. First of all, it's protecting organs long-term. So the long-term benefits are fantastic. But, sometimes if you're looking for health improvement and for symptoms management and relief, then it might not happen immediately. Some people it does. It really just depends. So when it comes to removing the deeply stored stuff, a lot of times the symptoms improvement comes later. So if you feel nothing right away, that's perfectly fine. If you feel better immediately, I just consider that a bonus. And I think a lot of that is just because you've relieved the burden of the daily dose toxins and your immune system is now calmer and you're able to your body's just able to breathe again, right? Your immune system has more energy and all this other stuff. So it's kind of hit or miss. Some people do feel better even within the first week, and some people it takes a few months to feel better. But regardless, really the goal is to remove these heavy metals, right? Because we know they're not good, deteriorating organs and contributing to a number of complex health issues and aging. So as we remove them, it's going to be helpful for everyone, whether you feel better right away or not. We want you to feel better, of course, but it just depends on how long it's going to take. So that's there's no, I can't give you a timeline of, okay, you're 3 weeks in, this is when you're going to start feeling this, because it really just depends on the person. You're detoxing at your pace. And so it's one of those things. One of the really surprising things that really surprises people a lot when they start in the protocol is what it does for their digestive tract, right? A lot of people are taking it for detox, but they stay on it because it just absolutely revolutionizes their gut. So here's what Lori had to say. My bowels have never been this normal since starting the ZeoCharge. Holy cow. I have rarely had a daily bowel movement without some sort of magnesium or other stimulant, and they've always floated, even as a child. And I've done so many gut resets, protocols, and such, and never been able to see what I'm seeing in my bowels the last 2 weeks. Pretty cool. Other Zeolite products have never had this impact on me. Very happy at 6 scoops, right? So she had started this protocol. She was only 2 weeks in, and she was already absolutely amazed at what it had done when all other protocols had done nothing for her digestion. She's 2 weeks in, and this is the first thing that really helped her. So thank you, Lori, for submitting that. Here's another one from Kimberly. She said, I just wanted to let you know how much I am pleased with ZeoCharge. I'm taking 6 scoops with no issues with constipation whatsoever. This is the first time I've ever done a detox program without any detox symptoms at all. Super pumped about it, right? So once again, she's starting on this protocol. She's on month 1, taking 6 scoops. And her number one concern, because she reached out to me, she was very concerned about constipation because she was prone to constipation, and she just assumed that this was going to constipate her. And she started on it at the higher dose and no constipation, right? And it actually alleviated her constipation and started helping her become even more regular. And she had done a number of other detoxes in the past. Actually had tried liquid and nano zeolites, which were a disaster for her. Had tried a bunch of other things. None of them worked at all. And so she was very skeptical because she said she had kind of given up on detox because she just wasn't able to do it. She was deemed, too sick to detox. And she's been able to do this. And this is months ago. She's still continuing on the protocol and still doing incredibly well, still absolutely loving the product. Her digestion is still great and still continuing to have no detox symptoms the whole time. And she did do testing. She did have access to it, and she was testing herself regularly, and she was able to remove, and she's been removing all of the metals tested for her from the deep level. She did the illegal scan. And after the first month, she already started detoxing the deeply stored mercury. And that's what really surprised her because she had done a bunch of testing in the past and nothing was able to get any mercury out. And now after 1 month, she was already starting to remove the mercury. So she was super pleased with it. Here's one more. Kenson says, so far ZeoCharge has been a game changer. And I don't say that lightly. I've tried other brands in the past on the high dose protocol, and they've all come up short in comparison. I've been chronically ill for some time now, and I can honestly say this has been one of the few products to move the needle, right? So just another thing, people try all sorts of stuff, and there is some good stuff out there. And even the great products out there just are not able to get the job done for a lot of people. And that's where ZeoCharge comes in, and it completely changes the game and it gets the job done. Right, so we're talking about investing in your health. It's actually quite reasonable. This whole entire protocol is less than $200 per month, right? So $200 for less than $200 per month, you can remove an incredible amount of deeply stored toxic metals from your body, and you can feel comfortable and confident understanding that you're actually getting them out of your body. You don't have to guess. You don't have to wonder, is the protocol working? You know that this is a proven protocol that's able to remove even the deeply stored mercury that's potentially been in there for a number of years. It's able to get it out of your body. And you can do that for less than $200 a month. That's fantastic. And even better than that, thank you for watching this presentation and dedicating some time to this and investing in yourself. So we're going to offer you $100 off the protocol to lower the cost even further. All you have to do is, as you place the order online, insert the promo code BESTDetox, and that's going to give you $100 off. All lowercase, BESTDetox, enter it at checkout, and that's our thank you for watching this video and investing in your health. So that's what I've got for you today. I hope you found this insightful, helpful, and I just want to say happy detoxing. Cheers to a healthier and happier 2024 and beyond.